What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. As always, I'm your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
And it's Motivation Monday, time to get fired up, time to learn together so we can continue to grow together and be better together. And we love to start off these episodes with a quote that was impactful for us throughout the week, and I'm really excited to share mine. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So my quote this week is, "This is such a short and precious life that it's really important that you don't spend it being unhappy." And I really just thought that this was a very simple, basic quote. It's nothing revolutionary, but I really think it is important to always revisit the fact that time is short, and you got to ask yourself, are you actually doing things that make you happy? Are you happy with where you're at physically, mentally, emotionally? Are you developing or are you regressing? Are you going the wrong way? And if you are regressing, you got to say, what do I actually need to go ahead and change? So even something I've been thinking about a lot lately, as I do for my clients, is what things are holding us back from our full potential? What actions, attitudes, habits can we break to break that cycle to actually reach a position of being better, of achieving more happiness, of just seeing more results? And one thing I've actively been challenging, as I personally am in a little bit of a lean bulk right now, looking to put on some meaningful muscle, continue to just enhance my body composition, look super good for Florida in the winter, which will be absolutely exciting. And I was looking at my game, like, what's going wrong? I've been really accurate with my spreadsheet, eating's been great, and I noticed, okay, I haven't done a lean bulk or being in much of a surplus in a while, and I was kind of on that gain-taining train where you're kind of hoping to gain a lot of muscle while you maintain. And you can definitely do this, especially as a newer lifter. This is going to be a lot harder as someone who's lifted over 10 years. So for me, I'm revisiting that by actually being in a small surplus, really challenging myself to be consistent with that and really make sure I'm doing it with good foods, doing it intelligently, make sure I'm using those extra carbs and glycogen to train extra hard in the gym. And then on the other side, I'm like, okay, I train hard, I train consistently. Where can I improve here? And I was watching a few videos just about just different concepts and ideas of training and how it all works. And the one individual was really pushing the importance of like avoiding junk volume. And it's so common when people go to the gym, they'll just run from one machine to the next and just go through it as quickly as they can. And I'm sure you've done those workouts versus you've done the workouts with a friend where they're counting your reps, they're pushing you to do two more, you're going to failure, you're being mindful of those slow negatives. And it just really reminded me that for the next forever, I really want to challenge myself to make sure there's no filler, no junk volume in my routine. And then I also thought the same for my life. I'm like, how can I avoid filler and junk time and really just be present, be aware, and actually get more with less? So if you do really, really good workouts in the gym and maybe you're there for 30 minutes, but it's an intense 30 minutes, you're pushing to the right ability, you're using weights that challenge you, you're going to blow someone out of the water. Recently, I went with my friends and we worked out for like 2 hours just to try all these different machines and be at this different gym. And I remember finishing that workout. I'm like, I've worked out for 2 hours. This should be crazy. But I felt less stimulated, less exhausted, and less change than I do for my normal workouts, which are about 70, 75 minutes, where I really bring it, where I'm intentional, where I'm mindful, where I'm squeezing, where I'm using the correct weights, where I'm not cheating any component of that journey. So that just really reminded me, it's like, okay, I can eke out more results, more happiness. I can push it. And just the same, like, life is precious, time is short, and going ahead to my thought, we'll come back to Califer's quote, of course, but I do think it's a good segue because these are how all my thoughts have come together to implore me to do more. One of my clients was mentioning how, to me, he had his son, he's married, he's got a lot going on, he has a really exciting new job, he's a pilot, he's doing all these great things. But he was saying to me, he's like, man, I wish I trained way harder before. Like when I thought I didn't have time, I realized how much time I had, how much like I could just lean into my training, my nutrition, I can crush it. And it really reminded me even how in The Office, Andy at the end of the show, he says, I wish you could know you're in the good old days before they've gone past. Because it's so easy to look back on things and be like, oh, that was the best. But in those moments you overlook it. And the way this all comes together for me is it's so easy to look at your situation now and really think that things are going to be easier for you. There's going to be more potential to make changes and to improve later. But you got to ask yourself, are you going to look back in the future and say, why didn't I train harder now? Why didn't I take my health seriously now? Why didn't I do these things? And even for me at 27, turning 28, like I'm in my prime right now. Like this is my time where hormonally, my body, my health, I should be training harder than ever. I should have the best ability, continue to build the best physique. And I always strive to do that. that, but I felt like this was an extra push to do so. And it's so easy for people, even as a coach, I hear it all the time. People will say, well, I don't have time to work out because I'm a university student. And then after that, they'll say, I don't have time to work out. I'm new to the workforce. And they'll say, I don't have time to work out. I just got married. I got a wedding coming up. I don't have time to work out. I just had a baby. I don't have time to work out. I have 5 kids. And case in point, in their head, they'll always say, once I'm done with this crazy time, it'll be easier later. But that's not the way it works. You really need to look where you are now and say, how can I do the best with the cards I have, and not just look to make excuses from it. So once again, coming full circle to my quote, short and precious life, it's really important you don't spend it being unhappy. If there's an area in your life you're unhappy about with, start putting in that action, start doing that work to change it. I even saw, it was a really good point on a short, a lot of people, this individual said on a YouTube short that so many people say they're unhappy, they're frustrated, they're stuck. And he's like, why don't you just take out a piece of paper and write, I'm stuck, and then put 100 different ways you could break through it. So instead of being a victim to that, just start looking at problems as things you can solve. And they may not solve overnight, but if you look at your situation and you're not just completely blind to where you could have blind spots, I train hard, I work out hard, but I know I can always do better. I'm always looking to improve, and you need to have that same attitude with any area of your life. And I just think it's a really good reminder. And even for me, I knew like when I had a baby come in my life, when I had my son, it'd be really hard, it'd be challenging, but I knew if I didn't put in that work then and work that much harder and adapt to that, later on I'd be wishing I did, because who knows where it happens and changes that take place and all these different things. So you'll see how this comes full circle, but case in point, no matter where you are right now, no matter how hard, now is your time to get after it. Now is your time to make it count. That's my spiel there.
I love that. I feel like we could end that there and people be like, all right, I'm heading to the gym. I'm putting in that work. That was inspiring, and I loved hearing that. And it's pretty awesome how that did come full circle to my quote as well. I didn't look at any notes or anything. I always think of what's the most like common on the top of my head, the one thing that inspires the most, the thing that, you know, that's the best part about quotes. I know I've said it, but just like where you're actually at. I can relate that to like reading books. Like now I'm going back to reading books that I feel like are just like where I'm at, what I need the most and stuff like that. And that's the same with quotes. Like there's some things that you'll hear that you're just like, it's not as relevant right now. And I think just being able to be aware of that and pay attention is awesome. But my quote that really stood out to me was from the author. I keep referencing him. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he has one of the greatest books ever. But the quote is, from James Clear: most failures are one-time costs. Most regrets are recurring costs. The pain of inaction stings longer than the pain of incorrect action. So once again, relating to what Josh had mentioned, and even just going off of his quote, like about just spending time, being unhappy, not taking those risks, not living to your full potential, not living your life, like just you'll never look back and be like, man, I'm so unhappy that I took that try, I took that attempt. And like, that's kind of the principle that I've had for the last 10 years. I still will continuously have. And of course, there's those times that I just want to kind of play the safe game and just be like, oh, well, you know, maybe in the future I'll do this, or like whatever it is. Like we all have those first thoughts, especially when it's uncomfortable. We all have that feeling, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. But I always think like, what's the worst that can happen here if I go on this fun trip that I'm like really striving for that's a bit uncomfortable? Or, you know, I can think of a million examples, but just the thought of like remembering, hey, most failures, like you will get over it. A lot of times you won't think about it. Like it is what it is, but it's those times where you just like, you regret not taking that action, like whatever that is. And I'm sure every single person listening can think of that one or two or 10 things where they're like, man, I wish I did this. Or when my friends were out backpacking, I wish I joined them on that thing. And like, maybe like whatever it is, like I know you can think of so many different things. So either way, that's my quote. I hope it inspires you to just get out there, to enjoy life, to like live it to the fullest, to push your limits and push your potential, and just, you know, not live within the regular box that's created, and step out of your comfort zone. So hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, 110%. Any other thoughts you want to jump into? Or
so yeah, like I know I'd been mentioning this as well, and it is something that like I always think of habit creation, especially as myself. I'm trying to create new habits, destroy old habits, and just I don't think I'll ever get to a point where it's like everything is perfect. And just as your life changes and adapts as well, it's always going to change. But moral of the story is similar to Atomic Habits, how he says make it easier, like creating new habits. I know I talked about last week. I was actually sitting and I was drinking my coffee out of like a mug that just made it like super hot, like those Yeti mugs. And it took me forever to finish because it was so hot, right? So I drank less coffee naturally. I drank it slower, it was just more enjoyable, like long term, of course. Whereas like when I have iced coffee, I drink it so quickly, right? Just based off of one small change is one thing's hot, one thing's cold. And I'm relating this to our fitness journey and like habit creation, especially because similar to what Josh was saying, like sitting down with a piece of pen and paper and just making those changes and listing out like, what do I need to change and like, how can I do that? There's a lot of people who struggle with, let's say, drinking water. The simple thing is just make it easier to accomplish, right? When you're trying to build a habit, you have good tasting water around the house, you have, your typical water bottles that you always drink from. It's quite an easy habit to create. When you sit down at the desk, you may have one there already. It's already there. If you're struggling with alcohol and you're trying to get rid of that, you just have to simply make it harder to essentially reach, right? I'm not saying that that's going to solve everything, but you just have to think, okay, how can I create a space and an atmosphere and a habit that's going to set me up for success to the point where it's either getting easier or something's getting harder. You stop going around the people that would cause you to drink a ton and, stuff like that. And, you don't bring it into the house. And like, I could list a bunch of different things for that specific scenario. But the point being is that like, when you are trying to especially just switch up a habit, when you do spend time thinking about like what exactly is going on, how can I make it harder to reach or make it, just easier to reach if you're trying to build one, that alone will make such a big difference. And it's something I really want you to think about and I think can help you for sure.
Yeah, and the more you can just build disciplined habits, that makes a lot of these things easier. Like if you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it, it makes it a lot worse. But if you go to the gym at a certain time, you have to meet someone there. We've used the analogy before. Imagine if I said, hey, if you're not at the gym, you're meeting right now today for your workout at 10 a.m. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's going to be there to personally train you to make sure you can get the best results possible. That's your training partner. You're not going to let that guy down. And even if you don't have a training partner, pretend you do. Make it a serious thing where like, I need to be there. I need to be there on time. And even if it's for yourself, it shows that you're a priority. And even for me, I can't say I live to journal. I don't wake up excited to journal in the morning, but it's a great practice. I love doing it every day in the sense that it's part of my routine. It makes it easier. If I said in my to-do things, journal at some point in the day, I would never do it. But I know exactly in my morning routine where I slip that in, where I make sure to do it. And the more you can make these things easier, the less intense it makes them. And there's a lot of different ways to go about that. And Kyle covered them quite well, but I think it's a great reminder. And the more you can just build habit, it's like a great hack. It just makes it even that much easier. Example, for lunch, every time me and Kyle work together, we go to this place, Salad, where you basically get 8 really healthy vegetables, rice or quinoa. You can get chicken, steak, or other meats. And then you can get like toppers like cranberry seeds, pumpkin seeds, cranberry, pumpkin seeds, hemp. Like it's just amazing. Like it's the best. Like superfood on superfood, you feel phenomenal. It's what we do. There's never, hey, where are we going for lunch? Should we go to McDonald's? We've just made that consistent habit. Whereas if me and Kyle, every time we work, we're like, all right, when we work together, we get McDonald's. We get a triple Big Mac, we get fries and a milkshake. That'd be a habit, just the same. That'd be a bad habit. And that's where you got to look at your routines and your schedules and say, what can I amend? What can I adjust? And then grow and just improve from that position.
And especially when you have busy lives and a lot of things on the go, just you have to kind of start to question, like, I was listening to a podcast the other day and Alex Hormozy was just like sharing all these things that he does that just makes it so much easier because, just he forgets a lot. Like we all have so many things going on. So, if you happen to just forget to weigh in consistently and your scale's tucked away in like the back corner of your closet and it's covered by clothes and stuff like that, well, of course that's going to happen. Whereas like, you sit down at your work desk each morning, it's like right there. I stick it out just a little bit. So it's like kind of in my way and it's like, oh, it's a good reminder, right? So it's just all about these like little things. Like I talk to so many people who are just like trying and they're like, I'm just trying to get myself into the gym. I'm trying to eat healthier, but it's just like, they haven't really thought about how the habit's created and how to get themselves there. So yeah, that's all I really have. Like just small little things that I think you can think about that will make a very big difference on your fitness journey.
All right, who's our client shout out for this week?
So this week we have Steven, who has been working with our awesome coach Jason, and he has lost some incredible weight. He started around the 225 mark down to about 172 as of now, which is 50 pounds, just over 50 pounds, which is absolutely incredible. And he's reaching his full potential. Like, you know, the best part is even after the initial 90 days, he's jumping into some more programming, some more accountability, and just he's loving the program. And honestly, that's really like, it means so much to us because we genuinely care. Like when someone comes into the program, like our biggest mission versus like other coaches out there who kind of just, you know, send a program, they forget about it, they don't really check in. Like we've always sat down, as you've heard us talk, and just try to figure out the most customized way to create a personalized program to hold someone accountable, to get them success. But anyways, just really happy about that. If you are watching on YouTube, you can of course see his transformation as well as a few of his tips that has led to his transformation. And then you can also check out our Instagram, which you can see, you know, a testimonial video and what he has to say about the program. And above all, like if you are ready to take that leap, like, you know, just my big thing is so many people, like Josh was saying before, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're never going to regret signing up for that thing and just getting in the best possible shape. Like I cannot think of anyone who would be like, man, I regret signing up for that, you know, just that gym or that program or that thing that helped me lose 20 pounds, 50 pounds. Like no one will ever regret that. So we are looking to help a few people who are motivated, who are ready to put in work with our online coaching program, one-on-one. All you have to do is send us a message with the keyword fat loss to our Instagram, which is Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT. We will take care of you. We guarantee your results, and we can't wait to help some of you awesome people.
Question is, why not you? Steven here was struggling, going 225 to 172. At one point, he said, I need to make a change. He reached out, and just like that, that's a lot of weight right there. That's over 50 pounds, which is absolutely phenomenal. And even if you don't have 50 pounds, even if you want to lose 10 pounds and put on muscle and be the best version of yourself, having a coach is going to show yourself that you're serious at doing that, and it's going to ensure that change. Having someone to hold you accountable, to be on your side, to optimize every component of your journey, to teach you not only how to do this for the short term, but for the rest of your life. So this is your chance to do this. I really recommend it because, once again, like Kyle said, investing in yourself is the best investment. Instead of going out, buying a new car, spending on clothes, like be a fitter, healthier, happier version of yourself. Health is everything. And like I said, time's fleeting. If you haven't been getting healthier, you got to ask yourself, when am I going to start doing that? As we get older, our body decays, we have less ability, it gets harder. So now is a great time to get ahead of that, no matter where you are at. No matter where you are at, the best time is right now. And once again, you can go ahead and do that and start your fat loss journey by DMing us fat loss or Instagram at Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT. Now we're going to go ahead and go into the mailbag, answer some of your phenomenal questions, and we got some really fun ones. Once again, thank you to everyone who submits the questions. I've really been getting in there and seeing what people are asking and picking ones that I think are very exciting that will promote some good discussion, and that will also be great educational tools for you to get better results faster. So if you have a question, please do ask us. You can once again message us on Instagram at Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT. Just say, hey, question for the podcast. Shoot it over. We'll be happy to answer it, and we look forward to you submitting some more questions. But we're going to go ahead and kick it off with question number 1, which is, I tend to get overzealous when I start working out and I go too hard. How do I know I'm lifting enough weight without overdoing it and being too sore to work out the next couple of days? So this was a great question. This was from Kaitlin, the K9 Trainer. So this is a big question because the gym is scary. It's an adjustment. When you first get in there and you don't want to go too hard, especially if you've gone hard and you realize how sore and brutal that can get, it can be very discouraging because you can be kind of scared of that. But what I will say is within 14 to 21 days, your body will adapt super, super well. Especially if you're an untrained individual, you need to get over that position of soreness and you need to let your body acclimate. Now, there's being just silly. If you get in there and you do Rich Piana's 8-hour arm workout, your arms are going to be obliterated. You're going to feel horrible. That's not productive. But being on a good routine that does challenge you, you should expect to be sore. That is absolutely natural. And especially when you start a new routine, any new stimulus will cause that inflammation, which is soreness, and that's how you can recover. Now, in terms of like overtraining and stuff, it's funny, I was saying this to Kyle. Alex Hormozy was saying how an individual came up to him and said, hey, aren't you worried you're overtraining? And then he said he was in a bad mood, so he kind of snapped, and he had said, well, why don't you worry about overtraining when you actually look like you work out? And of course, it's not a positive way to do it, but it is a good point that I find a lot of people that are worried about overtraining haven't really push themselves to a capacity where they can find that. And you would be truly amazed at what the body can do. It's very, very hard to overtrain. It's very, very rare. And once again, if you're within reason, you're doing a reasonable amount of volume, having a coach is the best way to do this because you can progressively add volume. You don't want to just go from 0 to 100 because where can you kind of navigate once you're at that 100? But case in point, like I said, it's very rare for someone to truly overdo it. I would get in there and make a routine. It'll be hard. You'll be sore. Let your body acclimate to it, and then you can decide to adjust that volume. If you're lifting for 4 hours, it's probably too long. 3 hours too long. But especially if you're doing good sets, and even what I was saying earlier, if you're not doing junk volume where you just go through the motions, you work out forever, that's not going to kill you anyways. But if you're training hard and consistently, that's when you can kind of say, ooh, am I maybe overdoing it? And it's so rare. I don't even know an instance of anyone I've ever seen overtraining. Your body is so resilient. As long as you're recovering well, you're eating good food, you're getting good sleep, it's absolutely incredible what the body can do. So that's what I would say. The soreness will dissipate with consistency. To work against that soreness, be consistent, have the right amount of fuel, make sure you're resting and recovering properly. But I know it's a complex question, and I try to answer it by explaining the processes around it. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like even today, we're jumping into a new routine and testing our maxes in 11 weeks. And Josh put together a killer routine, which I've been loving. So it's been awesome. But even just for my leg training, like it wasn't anything crazy. I've squatted 475 before. I just really just getting back into it, and I know that the 3 sets of 10 I was doing for this first week, like of legit doing it, will be. It'll be causing some soreness. It'll be tough. I'll probably be, just walking a little bit funny for a little bit. But when you do realize that it doesn't last, forever, and a lot of times your body truthfully does just like adapt, it is amazing. And I've seen like my body numerous times adapt through different training cycles. I have to kind of go through those, ups and downs where it's like a little bit of soreness and, kind of that pain and stuff. But even still, like going through this now, like going forward, it's just going to be awesome because I'm like, I'll be able to push a ton and everything will be totally fine. But I think my biggest like personal tip is just really having a structured routine that allows you to understand how many reps you should be leaving in the tank. Now, where it does get complicated, especially when you're doing this by yourself, and it's funny because I remember reading something before and I thought it was pretty accurate because a lot of times you'll ask someone like, okay, how many reps do you have left in the tank? And especially for women, they typically tend to downplay it. Like they'll, say, oh, that was like almost till failure. And they'll have like 8 reps left in the tank. Where sometimes us guys will just be like, I could do 6 more, but like, it'll be like almost till failure. So it is tough, but I will say like, that's why our programming, we do try to always give a reps in reserve. And we tell you how many reps you should typically be leaving in the tank. I think a lot of times, especially guys, where they struggle is like they'll be trying to do everything till failure. They'll be trying to max out the sets. They'll be trying to, just max out the weights, and like it can get a little bit complicated. I think another thing to consider is just like, how's my form? Because when your form does start to break down, if you're doing a deadlift and you really start yanking it, that's where things can get a little bit complicated. Whereas if you're keeping it tight, you're pushing yourself, comfortably and like leaving like, a rep or 2, maybe 3 reps left in the tank, like a good question to ask when you finish a set is how many reps could I do there? If it's 10, you're going way too light and you're not really challenging yourself. If you're going to failure every time, which most people don't, but it depends on the person and who you are, then you could cause some injuries. And once again, it depends on the exercise as well. Tricep push downs versus deadlifts, 2 very different exercises that, anyway, so hopefully that helps. Josh answered it well. I hope those tips helped, and it's a great question and some good answers there in my opinion.
Yeah, and having a coach on your side is the best here because you do need to look at the sum of everything. Like maybe on the side, you're also a marathoner and you're trying to lift on top of it and that's killing you, and that can be an entirely different story. But for most Gen Pop, as I mentioned, it's very, very, very hard to overtrain. I think people are just quick to say that because they really want to be careful with how much they're in their gym, and they don't want to be in the gym for like 4 hours and feel like it's their whole life. And it doesn't need to be that. It's really about the quality over the quantity. And just the same, some people will train for hours and hours doing nothing of value, and that's not going to help you either. And that's where you'll see people in the gym for years on end training, but they're not training right and they're not making progress. You'll see someone new come in and look insane in 6 months. And oftentimes it can be the quality of how you approach everything, the nutrition, the training, these are the big things. So I think that's an excellent question. I do hope that was helpful. Happy to elaborate some more if you have any more specifics you want to address, Kaitlin, but thank you for the question. Now for our next one, does it matter much when weighing raw food versus cooked food? And that's from Evan Yano.
So yeah, this is a really good question. And everyone, I mean, especially when it comes to logging on MyFitnessPal, it can make a difference. Like some people, let's say you have 200 grams of chicken breast and, beforehand it's 200 grams. And then afterwards you put on the scale, it ends up being quite lower just after cooking. So this is a really good question. And one thing I will say, like, personally speaking, just to get it as close as possible, I will say definitely I would when it's raw, I would say that would give you the most accurate results. Now, Josh is going to give you some really good input in terms of like what he thinks, and I think it's actually absolutely fantastic what you'll hear. But just mainly the biggest thing is just the nutrition fact. Like when you log it into MyFitnessPal, when you look, it does give us the just in the package state, like the numbers are given within that versus it doesn't actually say like afterwards once it is logged. So that is something to consider. But honestly, one thing I will say I've learned over time is that like it's good to be as close as possible, but at the same time, there are a lot of times where it's like very minuscule, like very small, that it's not a massive difference in terms of just like changing your physique. So I will say, I do know sometimes people will, kind of make a big difference. And I guess you could say like get a little bit caught up in like smaller details. Whereas like, they're just like, they're not optimizing their sleep. They're not really like training, but they're like, okay, I want to do this perfect. And it is good to do everything the best you possibly can. But it's also important to just like make sure that you're trying to get the sum of everything and like paying attention to like the bigger picture stuff as well. So just a small little thought there.
Yeah, I try not to complicate this too much. Uncooked, I would say, is better. It's most accurate, and you just want to make sure what you're logging is you find. Like, obviously, things get manipulated when you cook it. Even food labels, packages, they can differ as much as 30%. And it's not an exact game, but our job with logging is to be as precise as we can with these non-precise boundaries. And the more we can kind of lean into that, the better. So just make a decision, be consistent with it. I don't do raw just because I don't like messing, especially with raw meat. Like I don't want to have the chicken right on my scale or take out another plate to do it that I have to clean. Like it just adds an extra step. And to me, like that inconvenience would make me not want to track it as much. So I want to make that as easy as I can as possible. The one caveat I'll say with cooked food is when you're actually logging cooked food, you want to make sure you do account for like oils, butter, anything you use to kind of enhance that taste. That does need to be recorded as well. So that's just personally how I approach it. But yeah.
I think like even working off of that, so Josh's answer is fantastic there, but kind of working off of the thought process of just like trying to be perfect. I think just like it's a random thought that I have that I was sharing with one of my clients this past week in a check-in. And I think a lot of times like you try to be like as perfect as you can for a lot of things. And I remember what changed my perspective a few years ago was I was watching some videos and looking into just like the accuracy. So the FDA, like they, with their food labels, they can actually be up to 30% inaccurate, as Josh was mentioning there. And like, I just thought that was crazy because my first thought was like, what am I doing all this for, right? But honestly, like it is just good to have that data to give you that information and just help you stay accountable, help you stay on track, help you understand. It'll never be perfect. Like that's one thing I have accepted, but it'll always give you that guidance. It'll always give you that support that you need and just help you stay on track, even if it's not perfect. But the thing that really helped me kind of just navigate those situations where I kind of would more or less be like, oh, well, I don't know anyway. So what's the point of logging? What's the point of even trying? Like where I know some people have that mindset was I was just like, you know what? It's not going to be perfect, but I'd rather have the data. I'd rather have the numbers. I'd rather get some sort of guesstimation. But it is pretty crazy when you actually do consider like the fact that it can be as inaccurate. Even just like, I think they took a Starbucks sandwich that was like, let's say 400 calories like on the label. And then it ended up being either like 520 or like 360 or something like that, right? So it can vary a ton, but at the end of the day, having those numbers still will be way better than just saying, well, who cares anyway? So just a random thought and a random rant there.
Yeah, that's why it's best if you cook your own food, but you can also use common sense. Like sometimes I'll know if I've had 100 Starbucks sandwiches, if one is like twice as big or they put more meat, like you can kind of adjust the portion. I sometimes like to overlog. So if I think that it's a bigger portion than usual, which often it is, I'll do like 1.2 of that item. Like if the sub is bigger, it's denser. Like once again, this isn't exact and there's more correct ways to do it, even where you could say, oh, there's extra meat, so I'll log more meat. But in general, you got to kind of do what works for you and the level of accuracy you need. Obviously, the more accurate you can be, the better. And if you're deep in show prep, you're probably not eating out as much anyhow. But in general, we want to get themes and we want to be as consistent with it as we can. gym. And the best way to do that obviously is eating at home primarily. I know that won't work for everyone all the time, but that's how you work through these situations. And then last but not least, I do have a question for you actually. What are your views on full body workouts? I know they can be considered beginner style, but I know a lot of intermediate lifters use it too. I've tried a lot of styles, but thought I'd give the full body 3 days a week a shot. So I'm not a huge fan, only in the sense that I do think it's better splitting things up more intelligently, like really having more focus on areas, because when you're doing everything at once, it can be amazing. Full body can be great. I know a lot of people have a lot of success on them, but I also think it requires a lot of effort on the individual. Those workouts should generally be a little bit longer. They should be a little bit more intense. They need to be hyper focused, and I think not everyone has the capacity to do that. I know if you have an insanely busy schedule and you can do it at a great intensity and you don't care to have the world's best results possible, you're obviously getting less frequency as a result of this. So it limits what you can do and the different muscle groups and approaches you can take. And that's where I would be a little bit hesitant, just avoiding it. And in general, I think people like defaulting to things that are quote unquote easier. If you're lifting 4 days, 5 days a week, it's easier in your mind to say, oh, I'm just going to do 3. And if you're okay, if you go from 5 to 3 and maybe you see 70% of the results and you're like, I'm cool with that. I'm not trying to be a pro bodybuilder. I'm not trying to set any records here. That's totally fine. And maybe that works best for you and your schedule. But in general, if it was like one or the other and you had the ability to lift 4 to 5 times, I would definitely lean that way, because you can work more specific muscle groups. You can have more frequency. You can have more focus. And it's hard when you're just like doing so much. Like if you came into like school and they're like, all right, we're going to do 10 minutes of math, 10 minutes of philosophy, 10 minutes of science. Like it's hard to really kind of get set in there. Whereas if you're doing like a push day, you can really kind of focus on your chest. You're blasting in, you go to your shoulders, and then you go to your triceps. And that's where I prefer different splits. And you can manipulate splits so many different ways. Full body days, you're doing a lot in one day and it is very demanding. And if you have a bad session that day, you only have 3 in the week, I think it's a little bit harder. So I don't think they're the most optimal if you want the best results possible. Saying so, if you're busy, you want to be healthy, you want to see compositional change, you want to be strong, and you don't want to be in the gym that much, it's a great option. So it really just depends on your goals, and they can be an absolutely phenomenal tool, but I do think there are better ways to approach this.
Yeah, so like it's funny that Josh was bringing that up, because I was just envisioning myself doing one, because I haven't really done like full body workouts, and I think for me, like it does take a bit of time to like just get used to the movements I'm working. And like even just the push day example where you're just focused on your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, like you just get into a flow, like you get into the rhythm, like, you know, you hit your bench press and then you're used to using those pushing muscles, and you just kind of like, it's like kind of like a song. Like Josh always says, I love that analogy. Like it flows nicely. Whereas like the thought of me like hitting some squats and then going to do some chest stuff, and then going to do like bicep curls, and then like, you know, go back and do some shoulders. Like to me, it's just kind of all over the place. And like, I guess the argument for some people who do really, really love full body is that it allows you to give like your fullest to that like one exercise for the muscle group that you are working. But at the same time, it also will be hard to just get the proper amount of volume and to do, you know, because like you'd probably do one exercise per muscle group within each workout. If you do 2, that would also make it a very long workout as well. Whereas for us, like we just rather like dial in, you know, just focus specifically on what we're doing, adapt to that, enjoy it. And like, you know, even just when it comes to like four workouts per week, like it allows us to just have a lot more to work with there, where we can just like, you know, even potentially work each muscle group twice. And anyway, so there's a lot to consider. It is more of a personal preference, but it, you know, to say that I haven't programmed full body, that would be a lie. It depends on the person. Like if there's someone who says to me their exact scenario, where they're at, they got to be in there 3 times, they're also doing cardio in between the days. Like I have spent some time putting together some killer full body workouts, but over the years of us just creating workouts and putting something together, we do prefer to stay away from that and just do something more like push pull legs kind of specific. You know, we might even just do like a chest and a back for some people. But once again, it really depends on where you're at, what your goals are, you know, what your ambitions, your time frame, what you have access to. And that's always the biggest thing of like workouts to consider. But hey, if you want to give it a shot, cool. You may find that you're not a fan of it and just be like, hey, I'll go back to push pull legs or something like that. But yeah, hopefully that helps in some way or another.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you're looking to level up and you want to lose fat, gain muscle and just optimize your journey specific to your situation so you can overcome any obstacle that's in your way, go ahead and DM us on Instagram to @LossIsFit with the keyword fat loss. And we look forward to helping you out there become the best version of yourself.